Right, so this is going to be the prologue as well as an excerpt from chapter 1. So here we go, starting with the prologue. 500 years prior to the current time. Zolari, world of Theta. Moriel took a break from his hectic schedule to work in his garden of exotic flowers. It's relaxing for him, a form of therapy he desperately needs. Having his fingers digging in the dirt relieves some of his abundant stress. The process is particularly grounding for an earth elementalist like himself. Being an elder of their race has more downsides than any of their people realize. One is constant worry about those they serve now that humans and Masurians have dramatically advanced in spaceflight. The fragile races keep getting themselves into trouble in the vastness of their galaxy, acting recklessly as toddlers tend to do. The consequences of carelessness and arrogance are lethal when outer space is a part of the equation. Too many of the younglings are finding death instead of adventure. Zolari do everything possible to educate and aid the infant races without disregarding their free will. The efforts aren't always successful. Moriel's ruminations are disturbed by a portal opening inside his warded sanctuary. Amaria tumbles through, falling on the ground beside him. She's a total mess, dirty and rumpled, so unlike her normal state. Black streaks her snow-white hair and coppery skin. The glimpse he gets of her face shows puffiness from crying. Most concerning to him is she's pulsing magic at dangerous levels. She doesn't have the luxury of anything less than complete control of her abilities. The child he raised for 100 years throws herself into his arms, projecting grief with physically painful intensity. He's driven to his knees by the weight of her unrestrained power and emotions. He shields them to the best of his ability, but he's no match for her arcane strength. She sobs gibberish with her face buried against his chest. He doesn't need to understand her words to know what this degree of response means. Something terrible has happened to her family. Her barrage of emotions is so overwhelming he joins her crying fest instead of comforting her. A Praetorian attacked the family estate. Everyone else is dead. Moriel jumps when Masera speaks. He didn't realize the younger man had come through the portal too. Not that he would expect anything else. Wherever Amaria goes, her heartmate faithfully follows. Moriel looks up from his distraught heart-daughter, trying to make sense of what was said. The logical part of his brain understands the words, but his heart refuses to accept the news. Masera has fresh burns on his exposed skin and charred clothing, though he doesn't seem to notice. His focus is on Amaria, not his own condition. Masera moves close enough to grip Amaria's shoulder. The tidal waves of magic rolling out of her diminish to a tolerable level, allowing Moriel to draw a deep breath again and focus on what's happening. The man his heart-daughter loves has strong arcane abilities, though none lend themselves to healing. Moriel takes care of as many of the gruesome injuries as he can. Praetorian burns are difficult to heal by design. It further proves Amaria's mindset that she let Masera suffer when she can cure him. She's the last of her bloodline now. We won't be able to wait for her to have children. Masera's cobalt eyes are glassy, half vacant. He's shell-shocked by the events that led to his injuries. He's trying to process the implications. The couple wanted to wait for Amaria to reach full physical maturity and finish all the fluctuations their bodies go through before undergoing the stressors of pregnancy. She will continue having arcane strength spikes until she reaches the 1500-year mark. If she goes through an extreme spike, the unborn child won't survive her arcane overload. Sadly, Kitamanis women suffer an unusually high number of miscarriages because they're so overpowered. Unfortunately, waiting isn't an option with the rest of his lady love's family dead. The bloodline has to continue no matter how much pain it causes their matriarch. Will you protect me? Or will you protect and teach her as you did me, Tidin? Amaria chokes out between sobs. She has to know her future children will be looked after if something happens to her. I will love her as I have loved you and my own children, Moriel promises without hesitation. Follow her to Adonia? Whatever she needs. You can depend on me, including following her home. He hasn't been back to Adonia in 10,000 years. He chose to come to Zalar as a guide and guardian for the children born here. This is the place that feels like home to him now. But he'll return to his birthplace if that's what the next Kidamonas child needs. His loyalty to that family hasn't wavered once in his 14 millennia of life. He doesn't see it happening in the future either. They're too dedicated to protection of the innocent and upholding good. Amaria kisses his cheek. Domia Tiden. She wipes the tears off her face and arcanely cleans all three of them up, finally realizing her heartmate is injured. She takes care of that as well, far more effectively than Moriel could. Misera shelters her in his arms. We have to return. She needed reassurance that you will watch our daughters if something happens to us. Moriel rises from the ground so he can bow deeply to the couple. I pledge my life to guard and nurture your heirs. I remain a faithful servant to the Kidamonas family until my last heartbeat. Amaria places her palm on the back of his head, injecting her gratitude empathetically. She's choking down her sobs again, and her throat is too tight to speak. His pledge takes an enormous burden of worry off her shoulders. Her babies will be loved and protected if she's not around. With the unrest straining Adonia, that has become a stronger possibility than the children getting to spend their first century of life immersed in Zalari culture, learning firsthand about the people their family protects. Moriel feels their portal open before he rights himself, his eyes wide, almost comically at what he finds. He was so focused on the couple, he didn't notice what her power was doing. His garden is overflowing with mature, lush plants that were seeds until her arrival. Magic permeates the area, seeping deeply into the ground, ensuring his gardens will be bountiful for centuries. He smiles to himself as he begins the mental preparations for the arrival of his future charge. He's looking forward to when the next Kidamonas is born. He enjoys their delightful, sunny natures. It's an honor to be the one who molds them into responsible, caring leaders. He forces himself to focus on the good instead of their grief over losing the rest of the Kidamonas family. That will come later. When he can process that he has lost 13 of his past wards in a single moment without his heart shattering. All right, on to Chapter 1, titled Sector 3, Zalari Homeworlds. The strident blaring of a critical incident alarm drags Altmaier from much-needed rest. Bleary eyes try to focus on the displays as he silences the unwelcome racket before it wakes up his wife. AEF Middleton catastrophic damage. Casualties confirmed. Number unknown. Cause Nova. He rolls back over after reading the message, his perplexed brain unable to decipher why he would set an alarm for a human ship or why he received it. The cause wasn't an act of aggression or didn't involve a Zalari ship. Jason Altmaier wraps his arms around his bondmate, surrendering to exhausted sleep. Today marked the 4th anniversary of his granddaughter's death, and while he's grown more adept at dealing with the emotional exhaustion with each passing year, it has never gotten any easier. Their door chimes, and without waiting for an acknowledgement, Magnus Empeth Torek Remiz lets himself in. The aide's intrusion into his private rooms without warning is enough to tell him that something substantial has occurred. Doubly so because he's currently on family leave, and nothing is more important than their family to a Zalari. The only acceptable reason for disturbing him is an imminent threat to their homeworlds. Grand Chancellor, you've been summoned to command immediately. Chief Medical Officer Duvrol has been on Damascus for 5 hours. Torek's voice is tight with concern. The use of their full titles reinforces the severity of what's going on, promptly clearing Altmaier's brain of all confusion. But Damascus is Bravo Team's ship, assigned to shadow and assist Scarlet Graves whenever she's deployed. CMO Duverall would only go to them in the field if she sustained life-ending injuries. The importance of that critical incident alarm becomes terrifyingly clear. Altmaier is out of bed, dressed, and going through the door in less than 10 minutes without waking his beloved wife. Torek wrote a note for Calais while he was getting ready to let her know where they were going and why he would leave her during their time of grieving. Over 1,000 years of working together have molded the two men into a flawlessly integrated team. Each knows what the other needs to perform at their best. That's something he's immensely grateful for, with his heart and mind heavily focused on his family. The two men teleport to the closest command central entry point. The nerve center of the Zalari military is a sprawling series of beautiful crystal and shiny metal buildings covering 100 square miles of real estate. Most of the structures tower 50 stories above ground, with almost as many subterranean levels. Greenery drapes everything, creating a stunning vista that Altmaier doesn't presently give a damn about. Both men hop in a sleek silver transport pod that delivers them to their destination in minutes. They could be on site in seconds if teleportation were allowed inside the command's perimeter. This is one of those infrequent times that security restrictions grate on Altmaier. He doesn't fall into the minuscule category of people with unfettered access, nor would he want to. The 15 who do make the list have too much weight on them. Altmaier is playing catch-up now because their warlord delayed this notification until it was confirmed to be a critical incident. He uses the travel time to review the current intel they have available on Middleton, growing more concerned with everything he learns. There hasn't been an update from Dr. Duverall or Bravo team in 30 nerve-wracking minutes. What they do know doesn't make sense. A heavy cruiser has no business monitoring an unstable star. That's a job more suited to research vessels equipped with sensors designed for such events. He feels like he's missing crucial information about how this crisis occurred. He knows Astra commandeered Turla for his trip to intercept Damascus, their chief medical officer pulling a vessel from the Presidential Protection Armada instead of taking his own specialized craft exponentially increases Altmaier's worry. The time difference between what it takes the two ships to travel that distance is less than 5 minutes. He gets a reprieve from his intense emotions when real-time video from a pressurized bay on Tirla comes up on his dataplex. A Zalari swarm is tearing the damaged ship apart to reach trapped survivors. They have made astonishing progress in mere hours. Of course, Astra would consider all of Middleton's crew, not just their agent. Catastrophic damage means hull breaches and loss of life support, both of which are quickly fatal in the vacuum of space. Altmaier is ashamed of himself for having tunnel vision. Chancellor! Altmaier glances up at his aide. Torek is pale, his jaw clenched in concern. The impasse plex is turned for Altmaier to view a different video. The icy ball of fear he's fought to control explodes into hopelessness as he watches Middleton being loaded inside Turla. What was previously a long, rectangular, boxy vessel now looks like a child tried stomping their toy flat after twisting it like a corkscrew and folding it in half. The top of the bow is pressed to the top of the stern. You can clearly see the interior of the cruiser, where it's split in half. His heart stutters when he sees the ship's spine is shattered. The strongest, most resilient part of any vessel is in splinters. He cannot comprehend the amount of force required to generate this outcome. He needs to keep going through the data to understand what they're facing. He can't view the clinical information with any degree of comprehension. There were people inside Middleton when it was crushed. Anyone sucked out into space was shredded by the same forces that demolished their ship. There won't be enough left to return to their families for burial.